And following the announcement of U.S. strikes in Venezuela and the capture of Nicolas Maduro, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer participated in a phone briefing with reporters. Here's a listen to his comments.
Okay, thanks, everybody. I thank everybody for getting on the phone this afternoon. And, you know, like all Americans, I was just stunned, totally stunned and shocked to hear President Trump say that he intends for the United States to run Venezuela. It was reckless. It was dangerous. And looking at the president's demeanor, he didn't even seem to be aware of how dangerous and reckless it is. Let me be clear. Maduro is an illegitimate dictator, but launching military action without congressional authorization, without a credible plan for what comes next, is reckless. Now, I was in the skiff on 3 different occasions, as recently as December, and I asked the administration, I asked them, are you pursuing regime change? Are you intent on taking military action in Venezuela, Venezuelan territory? And they assured me that they were not pursuing those things. Clearly, they're not being straight with the American people. So I've been talking to so many members of my caucus today. Everybody is very, very just totally troubled, worried about how dangerous this is. Let me lay out just a few of the actions that have already been taken to hold the Trump administration accountable. First, Leader Jeffries and I called on the Trump administration to brief the Gang of Eight immediately, followed shortly by a briefing for the entire Congress in the beginning of next week. We want to know the administration's objectives, its plans to prevent a humanitarian and geopolitical disaster that plunges us into another endless war, or one that trades one corrupt dictator for another. There are so many questions that involve this. How many troops are on the ground now? American troops. How many troops do they expect to have a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? These kinds of questions have to be answered. The fact that they seem to be doing this almost on the cuff, even though it's so dangerous and so cosmic in its consequences. 2 hours ago, the president said that the vice president of Venezuela would listen to what he says. And then just a few minutes ago, she said that they should release Maduro. And she doesn't support what the administration, what the Trump government has done. So lots of unanswered questions, and we need a full briefing to get all of the answers. The reason there's congressional oversight, the reason Congress has the right to declare war, is so that those questions can be vetted before something as consequential as this occurs. But by keeping it in secret, in the dark, by not telling anybody, and I was not briefed, I still have not been briefed. We've had some contact with the administration in that we've asked them for the Gang of Eight briefing and the all congressmen and all senators briefing, but we've gotten no information from them. Second, the Senate's going to take up the War Powers Resolution next week. Been introduced by Senator Kaine, Senator Paul, and myself. It was filed before we left, so it's a privileged resolution, and Senator Kaine has the right to bring it up this week. I spoke to him a few hours ago. He will bring it up, and I told him I would support it and work to get floor time, adequate floor time, so we could debate and discuss this. And third, I've spoken with our ranking members on the relevant committees to review how their committees can act to hold the administration accountable. You'll be hearing more from them in the coming days. I've talked to a bunch of them today. They've already had some discussions with their chairs, who seem, some of the Republican chairs, at least privately on the phone, have expressed a lot of troublesome comments about what Trump is doing and the way he is doing it. And those discussions will continue. We're going to be pushing our Republican colleagues to stand up for the American people and to get this done. Congress should not be sidelined as the Trump administration gets sucked into another nation-building quagmire, and we're going to hold them accountable. protect American lives, to protect America's interests. No one can explain to me how this is America first. No one can explain to me how this will have a decent outcome, given what we know about past history and given the presentations that have been made that seem so based on almost surmise and lack of thorough thinking and fact. Two other points, and then I will turn it over to your questions. One, when Trump says he's against sovereignty, that sort of he's an attack on sovereignty. That warms the heart of every dictator in the world. What does Putin say? Can he convict someone in Ukraine of a crime and then abduct them? Same thing with Xi, same thing with Iran, same thing with so many of the dictators in the world. And second, the mere hypocrisy of this. Just a while back, Trump pardoned the Honduras dictator Hernandez. And if this is a war on drugs, how do you explain the bald and glaring contradiction between pardoning Hernandez of Honduras, who was convicted of, I believe, sending 400 kilos of cocaine into the United States? I don't remember the exact number. And then abducting Maduro. It makes you think that maybe to Trump, he wants to distract the American people, as he always does, from the skyrocketing costs they're facing, from the Epstein files. But doing something as cosmic as this and as serious as this is beyond belief. Even a Trump might not. Even a Trump should be weighing that in terms of its ability to distract, which it does, but it does far worse than that. So dangerous. Okay, I'm ready for some questions. I don't know how we're going to do this, but go ahead, Wynn.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Theo with the Washington Post. You're up first.
Hi, Theo. I'm going to take questions on this subject, of course.
Hi, Mr. Leader. Thank you so much for doing this. You said that you have had some contact with the administration today. Can you be more specific? Who have you talked with and what have they told you?
Yeah, we have reached out to the administration, simply making the request that the Gang of Eight briefing occur ASAP, as soon as today, even if possible, although we'd have to go to skips, and the all senators, all congressmen brief. They have not given us any details about what happened and haven't gotten even back to us on whether they've agreed to our request.
Were you notified of the strike? And if so,
no. No. We were not notified at all.
All right. Eric Garcia, you're up next.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you, Leader Schumer. Quick question. The government is running out of money at the end of the month. There are a number of other ways that, along with the War Powers Act, would you consider at all using government funding as a way to leverage when it comes to Venezuela, or what other mechanisms or tools can you use to hold the administration accountable?
Yeah, well,
use the government shutdown.
The 30-day, January 30th is days away. Let's first get all the facts out. That's what we're endeavoring to do right now. And our first ability to do that will be the War Powers Act of this week. And again, we are saying to the Republicans, this is your responsibility. President Trump is a member of your party. You've gone along with him over and over again. And this is one time you got to resist him. It's too serious.
Are you hearing anything from other Republicans?
As I said, we have heard from some Republicans in private conversations, chairs talking to their ranking members, that they are troubled by this, but not much more than that.
Okay, thanks. Jackie Koppel with News Nation.
Unmute. Hi, thank you so much. Couple
Sure.
questions. Do you think that the Trump administration took this action now, just before Congress comes back, because the War Powers Resolution vote was coming up? Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I couldn't answer that. I don't know what makes them do what they do. Again, the briefing, in its ramblingness, in its lack of specificity, in its contradiction from known facts on the ground, was so troubling, so deeply troubling. So I can't figure out why they do these things and when. But I'd remind you that one more thing: the War Powers Act, if they try to do anything subsequent, still has effect. They've talked about boots on the ground. They've talked about a second wave. All of those things could be affected by the War Powers Act.
And just as a follow-up, I understand you've said the three different things that Congress is doing, and you in particular, but what other power does Congress have? I mean, the president took action without coordination or approval.
Well, again, before we get in beyond what I said, the first step is to get all the facts out, as many as we can. I've been through this before, and I saw that when an administration goes too far, the public really reacts in a very strong way. That's one of the reasons that George W. Bush lost the Senate and the House in 2006. So first job is to get all the facts out. Second job, war powers, and then we'll see what happens after that. Let's hope that the War Powers Act can pass.
All right, thank you.
That is up to our Republican colleagues, by the way.
All right, Ben Weiss, you're up next.
Thanks, Leader Schumer. This is Ben Weiss from Courthouse News. You started to acknowledge this, and there's a lot of open questions about extended troop deployment in Venezuela, timeline, how many troops will be on the ground. I know you said you're still in the process of getting all the facts, but I'm curious if you think, if you're briefed that there might be a possibility of an extended deployment in Venezuela, something that would exceed the War Powers Act. Do you believe there needs to be a formal declaration of war? And is that something that you would want to try to compel out of the Senate?
It's hard to, I would not speculate. We're going to use all the tools we can to prevent this from getting worse.
Thanks, sir.
All right, thanks. Marissa Schultz with the New York Post. You're up. Marissa, you're still muted. There you go. Marissa, you're still muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks for doing the phone call. President Trump said that Maduro is on his way to New York. What's your understanding as to where he's going to be? What sort of precautions are made for his arrival, and when we might see him in court? And then the second question.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the administration has not given us any of those details or facts. They've given virtually none. It's been sort of a dark screen. And the kinds of questions I asked before and the answer to your question, we just don't know the answers. On something as significant as this, as deeply, as confounding as this, as changing the course of history in many ways, or with very strong likelihood, they've kept everyone in the total dark.
And the second question was, President Trump seemed to have some level of confidence with the Maduro's vice president as being the newly installed leader there in Venezuela. She made some comments earlier today, one, calling for Maduro's release, but two, seemingly leaving the door open, I guess, to working with the Trump administration. What do you know about this vice president, and what do you think of her capacity to?
Well, she's been a total tool of Maduro in the past, and I think there are great questions about her reliability in any way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Leanne Caldwell with Puck.
Hey, Senator. So the president before this has been very open about encouraging American businesses, including oil companies, to invest and to get involved in business in Venezuela. Now there's reporting out from the Wall Street Journal and others who say that top Wall Street firms are ready to go and to invest in the country. Have you heard anything about this? And what is your take on immediate U.S. investment in the country?
Well, I have not heard anything about this. That's number one. And number two, Trump seems to do a whole lot of things that are irrational, that hurt the American people for oil and oil interests. And we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to watch that like a hawk. The American people are, and all of us are.
All right. Thanks, Leanne. And then we'll do two more, Tyler and then Michael Jones. Tyler, you're up.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Leader Schumer, for holding this. If you could just go a little bit more into detail, you mentioned efforts on potentially holding the Trump administration and these officials accountable. What does that look like, and what are the options you guys would have this year, and then obviously looking forward to the next Congress when Democrats might have a majority to hold folks accountable for taking this kind of action? Is that something that could rise to impeachment, or what other options are available to you guys?
Yeah. Tyler, I just say it's premature to guess that far into the future. We hope that, as I said, we hope that we can have support from our Republican colleagues to put a brake on this long before it gets that far. This is unprecedented as to what he has done and the way he has done it, and the secrecy in which he is engaged in it. And we're going to do everything we can to hold them accountable and to restrain the kinds of bad efforts that seem to be happening right now and could get worse.
All right. Last question from Michael Jones.
Thanks, thanks, Alex. Thanks, Leader Schumer. Secretary Rubio said at Mar-a-Lago earlier that this was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. He called it a, quote, trigger-based mission. President Trump suggested that the administration didn't inform you all because, quote, Congress has a tendency to leak. I wanted to get your reaction to that. Do you accept that rationale as a reason or a defense for not informing Congress?
No, it's an excuse. It's an excuse for secrecy, and that's why there's a Gang of Eight. And it's been very carefully held. I believe they use that as a total excuse to keep Congress, all of Congress, in the dark. And on something as serious as this, that is just outrageous and dangerous. One of the reasons we have hearings, we have consultation with Congress, is so that, and one of the reasons the founding fathers gave the War Powers Act to the ability to declare war to the Congress, so there would be debate, discussion, different points of view before something so momentous happens. And they're just ripping up that part of the Constitution.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Senator.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Have a nice. I hesitate on such a troubling day to say have a nice day, but I hope everyone's safe. Thank you.
And some reaction